Zoom, actually people don't know I'm giving you a class today. One thing is, while we're on Zoom, I'm having a portion here that's going to look at everybody in the class, so if you're all sleeping, the whole world will see you sleeping in class. Let me get everybody here, because I don't normally give class on Sunday, so that they're not watching. Okay. Why aren't you here? Yeah, Don, I'm not going to accept your evasiveness. Why aren't you here? Why aren't you here? No, you should be here for the whole morning program. We're tightening up things here now. No more of this nonsense. No more Mr. Nice Guy, as you see. So, don't worry, I'm not going to bite you. I'm not angry, I'm just trying to discipline. See if I put this here. Must be some way to put this so it'll be more sound. Yeah. There we go. Hare Krishna. Okay. I think we're going to have more discipline here in New Goloka from now on. What do you think? Yeah, he agrees. What's that? No. People should come to Mangala Arti. They can chant afterwards. I mean, I would basically sit here and chant japa in the temple and force everybody to stay here. But, however, you know, I have my deity worship in the morning. I got most of my rounds done anyway before Mangala Arti. So, I have a tight schedule. All right. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Gopijana Malava Girivardhare Gopijana Malava Girivardhare Yasodanandana Brajadana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajadana Ranjana Jamuna Tera Vanachare Yamuna Tera Vanachare Jai Ho Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari. Jai Ho Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatikacharya, also Teta Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Charananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananda Koti Vaishnav Vrendi Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Hridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopika Sayam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Maturadam Ki Jai, Jagadasami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari 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 Bol. Okay, so today is the Parents' Day of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, so we're going to speak about Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur today. Of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, so Omagana Tivananda Shah Gananjana Shlakya Chakshur Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is considered to be the seventh, what's that? Oh, the picture. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is considered to be the seventh Goswami. And he was called that not by one of the members of the Krishna conscious movement, but by a great sage or intellectual in India. So we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. So, of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is the spiritual master. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is the spiritual master of Srila Gaurkishordas Babaji Maharaj, who is the spiritual master of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who is the spiritual master of our spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. So, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a grahasta, and throughout, let's say, 98% of his life, he remained a grahasta, and he only took sannyas, the Babaji order of sannyas, during the final years of his life, or his pastimes. And during those final years, he may believe he was sick, so nobody would bother him. Unlike some of the devotees here who get sick, so nobody will bother them, come to the morning program. Anyway, so, apart from that, let's talk a little bit about his life and pastime. So he was born in 1838 on September 2nd. So that's a different day than today, obviously, because it was September 2nd in the Vaishnav calendar, which is the same day as today, the day after Lord Vamana's appearance. So that's how you really can tell. For example, I was born, didn't appear. I was born October 1st, 1949, and that was the day after that was the Ekadasi, actually, Pashanakusha Ekadasi. And so, therefore, I know that my so-called appearance day occurs every year on Pashanakusha Ekadasi. Anyway, so he was born in 1838 in a place called Viranagar. And most of his family were not devotees. In fact, they were actually devoted to Lord Shiva, and actually there were some impersonalists. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was known, in addition to being called Kedaranatha, which is a name of Lord Shiva, actually. Like Kedaranath. Everyone's heard of Kedaranath? There's a place like that, Kedaranath. So Kedaranatha means the Lord. It's a name of Lord Shiva. So he was actually also called Daicha Kulera Prahlad. That means he was compared to Prahlad Maharaj, who was born in a family of demons. So it's not that Bhaktivinoda Thakur's family was actually demons, but they had no respect for Vaishnavism. So I guess in that case, they're demons. At least they were acting like that. So in the beginning of his life, his life was very opulent. And he went to elementary school, as everyone did, then went to English school in Krishnanagar. In other words, he was trained in English basically from the time he was about 8 years old. And when he was 11 years old, something really heavy happened. His father passed away, and the riches and land that had been granted to his family were taken away through some political scheme. And his family became poverty-stricken at that time. So his mother, even at that particular age, he was 11 years old, this happened. Then at 12, he got married. Now, let me explain what that means. This is not the child marriage that everybody's against in the West, including me. This is an arrangement so that later on, when they're mature, they will live together. You understand? So that way, there was no question. Actually, Prabhupada had that type of marriage too. And then Prabhupada didn't like her when they actually lived together. And then Prabhupada, he went to his father and said, can I have another wife? Because at that time, it was all right. Polygamy was permitted. And Prabhupada's father said, no, this wife is fantastic for you. Because in this way, you won't get attached. So, anyway, I'm not saying that everybody should have a wife that drives them crazy and sells their Bhagavatams for tea biscuits. However, in this particular case, it was actually Krishna's plan. It's interesting because last night in my class we were talking about like Krishna's plan, how Krishna, isn't it? How Krishna arranges everything. But still, you could say, well, it's Krishna's plan. You can make the point Prabhupada was being manipulated, but he wasn't. There was Prabhupada's choice at each point. I mean, Prabhupada could have disobeyed his father and married again. Prabhupada could have, so at every point, Prabhupada is showing his own desire to serve the Supreme Personality of God. It's not that I don't know how many people here were on my class last night, but it's not that, Krishna was just like making this arrangement and saying, well, if I do this, Prabhupada will do that. If I do that, Prabhupada will do that. That's rather mechanistic. It's like my computer, if I do this, my computer will do that. And if I do that, my computer will do that. That's not the point. Like Krishna was putting Prabhupada in certain situations, and Prabhupada was passing the test in each and every circumstance. You understand? Proving his purity. Of course, Krishna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, on the other hand, knew what Prabhupada was going to do. But still, Prabhupada has that free will. Because without free will, there's no heroism. There's no fantastic pastimes without free will, right? Then it's just like, Krishna just like knowing. It's just like you have a conditioned response. It's just like the doctor sometimes will hit you in the knee. I don't know if they still do that. No, I don't think they still do that. Maybe that was a car accident. But anyway, the doctor hits you in the knee, and then what happens? Tests your reflexes, goes up. So it's not that Krishna's just like hitting the devotee in the whatever, solar plexus. And they're just testing the devotee's reflexes. When a devotee does something, it's not just Krishna. Krishna is only one of the 5 factors of action. The other factors are in our control, right? Anyone who's read the Bhagavad Gita will know that. So, then Bhaktivinoda Thakur was being educated in Calcutta at that time, but then he got sick. and he was treated by a Muslim soothsayer. That means soothsayer means like someone who can predict the future, who predicted that Bhaktivinoda Thakur's village would be destroyed, and that also Bhaktivinoda Thakur would be recognized as a great devotee of Krishna. But that took some time. When he was 18, he went to college in Calcutta, and he was writing extensively in English and Bengali, and many of these essays were published in the local journal. And he actually became so expert in English literature and speech making that he trained up a person who would become a well-known orator in the English Parliament later on. And in 1857, and remember, he's very young, he's in his 20s now, 1857, 1858, he composed a two-part English epic entitled The Poriad about Alexander the Great. So, this is someone who's extremely brilliant like this. But he was more attracted to Christian theology and found it much more interested than Hinduism. Because primarily what was being taught in the name of Hinduism was what we call monism. I'm God, you're God, or everything is one. Anyway, there's different types of monism. And he would read people like Channing, Walker Emerson, and he tried to compare a little bit of the Hinduism with the Western literature. He gave a lecture about the evolution through the mode of goodness, but basically he was not attracted to Hindu literature because of this impersonalism. So this is interesting because basically, if one looks at Hinduism, as a whatever it is, because Hinduism is just a geographical designation anyway, isn't it? Because they couldn't pronounce Sindhu properly, it became Hindu. Just because someone had a lisp. Not a lisp. I mean, because in Iran, they couldn't pronounce the S, so they pronounced it her, Hindu, Shindo. Anyway, so because basically it was a hodgepodge, and even Vaishnavism was not respected at that time because Vaishnavism was considered to be basically a sex religion. Because people were imitating Radha and Krishna, and they were thinking. I mean, even we had people come to the temple, and Christian people remember this. That, a girl came to the temple, and she said, "I'm Radha, my boyfriend is Krishna." Anyway. I mean, what a ugly Krishna that was. Anyway, so, and she was quite challenged as far as being Radharani. Anyway, but people like that, isn't it? And even in Hindu films like Bollywood films, they say, "I'm your Krishna and you're my Radha." Isn't that true? They say that sometimes. It's just like so. Anyway, but because Hinduism was misunderstood, at least the Vedic tradition was misunderstood by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So then, before he actually came to Krishna consciousness, and you might say, how can he come to Krishna consciousness? He's a pure devotee, he's Saktabesh Avatar. Well, this is a pastime. Sometimes Krishna puts even his pure devotees, Shaktabesh avatars, into situations that are apparently counterproductive to Krishna consciousness, like Haridas Thakur. So anyway, of course there's that story that Haridas Thakur is Lord Brahman. He was put into that situation because he made the offense of stealing the calves and the cowherd boys from Krishna. But that's a pastime. So then, anyway, he was very much attracted to Christianity. So he went to Orissa to visit his grandfather, Raja Vallabha, who was getting ready to leave the planet. And Raja Vallabha, his grandfather, predicted that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when he was a little older, would be a great preacher of Krishna consciousness, and he advised Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his last instructions to visit all the monasteries and temples in Orissa, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur did. Later on, he accepted a post of deputy magistrate in the government of Bengal, and he was seeing so much corruption in the government that he established a organization to actually rid the government of corruption. And he wrote another English book called Our Wants, and other literatures and poems like Vijayanagram and Sannyasi. At this time, he received for the first time copies of the Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. And when he received them, his faith in Krishna consciousness manifested. Here it says developed, but I would say his faith was already there, and it manifested completely, and he understood the superiority of the Vedic literatures, and he became so absorbed in Krishna consciousness that he was reading the Shastras day and night. And he published a song in 1869 about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu entitled Satchidananda Premalankara. And then he gave speeches on the Srimad Bhagavatam, and became manifest. At that point, his devotional service became completely manifest. So before that, it wasn't manifest. It was there. I mean, even with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very young, he didn't manifest his devotional service or manifest his position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead until he took initiation. So you find this happens in the pastimes of many personalities. In fact, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu basically used to philosophically attack the devotees and challenge them. And then when he took initiation, he became transformed. But he was always the same, but it's a pastime. Don't criticize Lord Chaitanya. So, after he became manifested his position as a great devotee, he was transferred to a place called Champarana, where people were worshiping a ghost in a banyan tree. And the reason they were worshiping the ghost in the banyan tree is the ghost had the ability to influence the mind of the local judge. So like if you got a speeding ticket, of course in those days they didn't have speeding tickets. Speeding with your rickshaw. If you got a speeding ticket, then you could just go to the tree and you get let off because the ghost would influence the judge. Pretty good idea. Maybe we should just do that insofar as it goes with a particular political personality in America. So anyway, so Bhaktivinoda Thakur engaged the father of a great girl scholar to chant the Srimad Bhagavatam under a tree. The tree fell down, the ghost left, and they were freed of the ghost. So another interesting thing that happened near this particular place, near the capital of Orissa, the capital of Orissa is Bhubaneswara. I think it was at that time. Now it is, of course. It might have been Cuttack before. I think it was Cuttack before, but I don't know at this time when it was. So there was a yogi who lived near this, the capital of Orissa. His name was Bishikashena. And this Bishikashena, he had many yogic powers, and what he could do was he could lean into fire, make fire come from his hair, influence people's minds, make people sick. He had some of these yogic powers like Anima Siddhi, Lagima Siddhi. I don't know if he can make himself small, but anyway, some of the yogic powers control other people's minds. So what he did is he declared himself to be God. And he said, because I'm Krishna, I'm God, you should send all the young girls to have a rasa dance with me. So people were so foolish that in all the villages around there, they would send all the young girls to have an illicit relationship with this creep. And he had two friends, even though he said he was Vishnu, not Krishna. He had two friends, one named Brahma and the other one Shiva. And so he thought, we're the Guna avatars. We talked about this last night, Guna avatars. So anyway, so he made one mistake, of course, two mistakes. One is he declared himself to be God. Second mistake is he actually was saying that he wanted to overthrow the English government. That was the bigger mistake. Because then the English government got on his case and called for Bhaktivinoda Thakur to arrest him. Everybody else was afraid to arrest him because he had all these mystic powers. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur went there, and he said to him, I appreciate your mystic powers. Please come and see Lord Jagannath in Jagannath Puri. And this Bhishika Sena said, why should I come to see Lord Jagannath? He's only a hunk of wood. Great offense at Lord Jagannath's lotus feet. I am the supreme in person. So when Bhaktivinoda Thakur heard this, he became furious and instantly arrested the rogue, brought him to Puri, threw him in jail, but he had to be guarded by Muslims because the Hindus were too suspicious about the whole thing. 36 Muslim constables and 72 policemen from Cuttack, day and night. The reason for that is that there were massive protests outside of the prison. It's not that he was so powerful, but just like nowadays, you got so many crazy people who do protest. I'm not saying all protests are crazy. Some are good. But just like in New Zealand, devotees sent me a message about this. In New Zealand, the devotees went out on a get rid of the mask protest. You heard about that? We shouldn't be associated with this craziness, with the conspiracy theory. Because these are even in New Zealand, they have these QAnon people and all sorts of people like that, conspiracy people. So we have to be very careful not to associate our name, even though we're chanting the holy name. We don't want to associate our name with crazy conspiracy theories, and especially this thing about the masks and everything like that. One thing I was going to mention after class, I should mention again. So we've already lost one of our many great devotees through this virus. And today I was just informed, anyway, I'll tell you after. Another great devotee, I'm not going to tell you who because I don't want to disturb the class. Anyway, after class, after greeting the deities, has been diagnosed with COVID. So we have to be careful who we associate with. Just like so this protest, they had massive protests outside of the prison, and so they needed a lot of guards. So anyway, after this trial lasted to this guy for 18 days, thousands of people gathered outside, demanding this rascal's release. On the 6th day of the trial, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's daughter became seriously ill, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, because the yogi was affecting her health, he said, yes, let us all die, but this rascal must be punished. And the last day in court, Bhaktivinoda Thakur became so ill from high fever and suffered exactly as his daughter did. And so he dragged himself to court and pronounced the verdict, 18 months, only 18 months, for political conspiracy, because it wasn't against the law to declare yourself to be God. Can't go to jail for that. And so then the district medical officer, who was an Englishman, cut off all the yogi's hair, and the yogi immediately fell to the ground, lost all his hair, like Samson and Delilah story. The yogi fell to the ground, and he lost all of his power. Later on, he committed suicide in jail. So that was the end of that story. Then Bhaktivinoda Thakur went to Jagannath Puri, where he studied the commentaries of the great acharyas on the Srimad Bhagavatam, and copied out longhand the Shat Shandarbhas of Srila Jiva Goswami, and studied Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is our nectar devotion. And then he went into writing seclusion for some time at this point, still doing his duties as a magistrate, and composed these books such as the Krishna Samhita, Tattva Sutra, Tattva Viveka, Kalyana Kalpaturu, Adatta Kosuba, which is a Sanskrit book. And also in Jagannath Puri, he established a Vaishnava discussion group at the place where Ramananda Roy did his bhajan. And he dealt with someone named Raghunath Das Babaji, who criticized him, but this particular Babaji got sick. Then he begged for Bhaktivinoda Thakur's forgiveness. He was forgiven, and then he was cured, and he became a great devotee of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. There was another person called Charna Das Babaji, who came up with this Hare Krishna mantra, which is not bona fide. Nitai Gaur Radhesham Hare Krishna Hare Ram. Actually, it's Bhaja Hare Krishna Hare Ram. It was the bogus mantra he came up with. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur criticized him for creating this bogus mantra. Later on, he admitted it, that he was being bogus, but he actually died. He got like some. Let's see, he died. 6 months later. He died in great distress, and he was quite popular. He still has some followers today. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur would spend a long time discussing Krishna consciousness in the Tota Gopinath Mandir. Tota Gopinath Mandir is the temple which was established by Gadadhar Pandit Goswami, in which he worshipped the deity of Tota Gopinath, sitting down deity, because previously the deity would stand up and the deity sat down to allow him to dress him. And then he established a house. He actually bought a house adjacent to the main road in Jagannath Puri. And on the 5th day of the dark fortnight of Magh, in the month of Magh, in the year 1874, the 4th son of his took birth. And that son was named Bimala Prasad, who is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was born in Jagannath Puri. And you can actually go visit the place of his birth today if you go to Jagannath Puri. Then in 1874, Bhaktivinoda Thakur discovered that the king was taking all the money from the donation box and spending it on himself. That's just like we have a hundi here, and sometimes the devotees empty out the hundi and they deposit it in the bank. But nobody's spending the money on themselves. It's very, very important. So, of course, we have an electronic hundi which makes sure that nobody's spending the money on themselves, because it goes directly into the bank account. So, anyway, Bhaktivinoda Thakur passed judgment on the king, and he had the king offer boga, that is food, to Lord Jagannath 52 times a day. The king got so upset because he was becoming bankrupt, losing all of his money, and the king decided to kill Bhaktivinoda Thakur, so he employed 50 pandits in doing a sacrifice so that Bhaktivinoda Thakur would die after a month. And after a month, instead of Bhaktivinoda Thakur dying, guess what happened? The king's son died. So, then he took Pancharatriki initiation from Vipini Vihari Goswami. Now, Vipini Vihari Goswami is not his primary guru. His primary guru is Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, the Siksha Guru. So, what is Pancharatriki initiation? Pancharatriki initiation is initiation into the deity worship and the Gayatri mantras like that. We have 2 other types of initiation. No, we only have one other type, but there are 2 other types of initiation. One is the Vedic initiation, which is only given to seminal brahmanas. So none of us are seminal brahmanas except for Adipurusha here. He's a seminal Vaishya. So anyway, right? So anyway, then that's the Vedic, and the other type is the Bhagavat Vidi. Bhagavat Vidi is the chanting of the holy name and the glorification, Srimad Bhagavatam, and philosophy of Krishna consciousness, and the preaching of Krishna consciousness. And so that Bhagavat Vidi guru of Bhaktivinoda Thakur was Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. So Bhagavat Vidi, or Bhagavat initiation, is actually more important than the Pancharatrika initiation. So, anyway, many people approached Bhaktivinoda Thakur and became great devotees of the Lord just by associating with Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur then he went to see the land of Braj, that means Vrindavan. He took off 3 months for this purpose, and there he met Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, who became his Bhagavat Vidi guru, and moved But Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj would move every 6 months between Navadvip and Vrindavan. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, during this time, rectified a situation in Vrindavan that was occurring, which is that there were these dacoits known as the Kanjaharas who robbed and killed pilgrims. And he got rid of them. Now, for those of you who don't know, dacoit doesn't mean ordinary robber. Dacoit means someone who actually kills, rapes, and destroys people and property. Horrible, like Rakshasas. And then he established a Bhakti Bhavan in Calcutta. Anyway, there's so much here. Much time? Oh my God, we have very little time. Just let me skip ahead here. Yeah. So anyway, just to skip ahead, I don't have time to read all these details about his life because I have so many pages. I have like 11 pages about his life. I just want to read about his daily schedule because I think that that's very important for us to hear. Let's see. Let me read a statement by a devotee, the Calcutta High Court judge, about Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I knew Thakur Bhaktivinoda intimately as a friend and a relation. Even under the pressure of official work as a magistrate in charge of a heavy subdivision, he would always find time for devotional contemplation and work. And whenever I met him, our talk would turn in a few moments to the subject of bhakti and Dvaita Vada. Dvaita Vada means duality. In other words, there's a difference between the Lord and ourselves. Of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur primarily preached about Achinchya Veda Veda Tattva, which means one and different simultaneously. We are the same quality as God, we are parts and parcels of God, but also we have our individual identity. And the saintly work that lay before him. Service to God was the only thing he longed for, and service under the government, however honorable, was to him a clog. In other words, just a botheration. So here is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's schedule every day. 7:30 to 8 o'clock p.m. he would take rest. At 10 o'clock p.m. he would get up. So in other words, after 2 or 2.5 hours, he would get up, light his oil lamp, and write. And he would write until 4 a.m. in the morning. Then he'd take rest for half an hour. Then he'd rise again. He'd wash his hands and face, chant japa till about 7 o'clock in the morning. At 7 o'clock he would write letters. At 7:30 he would read some Vaishnava literature. At 8:30, you see I'm getting messages. At 8:30 in the morning he would receive guests. And you could see how punctual he was. He was one of the first acharyas ever to carry a watch. He carried a pocket watch, which is called a fob, because at that time they didn't have wristwatches. So he'd receive guests or continue to read. At 9:30 to 9:45 he would take a power nap. At 9:45 he would take another bath, take breakfast, half quart of milk, couple of chapatis, fruit, go to court in carriage. He would wear a coat and pants to court with double-sized tilak neck bead, tulsi neck beads, and tilak. So he wasn't embarrassed about being a Vaishnava. He just wore double-sized tulsi neck beads. He was very strong in his decisions. He would decide immediately, would not allow any humbug in his court. And nobody could stand before him. He would shave his head monthly. At 10 o'clock, court began. At 1 o'clock, the court was finished. He'd come home and bathe and refresh. At 2 o'clock, he'd return to his office. At 5 o'clock, he'd translate works from Sanskrit to Bengali, then take his evening meal of rice and a couple of chapatis, half a quart of milk. He always consulted a pocket watch and kept time very punctually. He was very charitable to Brahmins. So these are some of the... he declined all honors and titles offered by the government to him on the grounds that they might stand against his holy mission of life. He was very strict in moral principles and avoided luxurious life. He spoke, he never chewed betel, which was actually very common in those days and still is common now in Bengal. He spoke Bengali, Sanskrit, English, Latin, Urdu, Persian, and Orient. He started writing books at the age of 12 and continued turning out a profuse number of volumes up until his departure from this world. And I don't think I even have time to read the names of all the books he wrote. I mean, if you look at this piece of paper, this whole page, no, that's not it. From here to here, go to the next page, and from here to here. Did everybody see? And of course he was able to do that because of his great devotion. But he understood the point, which is one of the Vaishnava qualities, of not wasting any time. You understand? That's why he kept a watch with him all the time. So he was extremely punctual, did everything at the same time every day. And this way he was able to accomplish a lot. So if we make for ourselves a schedule and we stick to that schedule, I mean, obviously if there's an emergency situation, you can't stick to a particular schedule. But if you make a schedule, you can accomplish so much during the day. I mean, I'm not bragging about myself, but I have this schedule. I go to Mangal Arti, do my deity worship, make my offering to my deities in the morning, come back and give class. I have just about all my rounds done, and I'm ready to roll. Not roll, but anyway, ready to do my service. Anyway, so as far as, then we can talk a little bit more about the pastimes of Bhaktivinoda Thakur before, because we still got 3 or 4 minutes left to class. Anyway, so any questions? Because tonight we'll speak more about Bhaktivinoda Thakur in the evening class online. Any questions or comments? Apurva? Yeah. I mean, he was, of course, the father of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he actually gave Harinam initiation to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and also gave to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur a kurma deity, and also the Shringa mantra. 3 things he gave to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. A kurma deity, because the kurma is the presiding deity of the nectarian ocean of devotional service. He's, tortoise incarnation of the Lord. And then he gave him the Shringa mantra, because Lord Nrsingadev not only protects us in an external sense, but Lord Nrsingadev eradicates all the anarthas or unwanted things we have in the heart, like lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy, etc., like that. And then, of course, then he gave him the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, initiated him in the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Anyway, so he's considered the 7th Goswami. And the word Goswami is very interesting. It can be used in an ordinary sense. Ordinary sense means like someone is in a specific order of life, ashram. Or it can be used in a descriptive sense. Descriptive sense means that one is controlling his senses. So that's actually the most important use of the word Goswami. One who controls his senses. Swami, of course, means controller. Go means senses, also means cows. But in this particular context, means senses. So, anyway, he was an actual Goswami. And it's interesting, Prabhupada, when he gave sannyas to different devotees, he would give the title Goswami to devotees who were householders before. And he'd give the title Swami to devotees who were brahmacharis. So whatever. That was Prabhupada's system. It's interesting. Okay.
Govindam Adi Purusham